My name is Teresa Orton, and I'm the director of the Daughters of Utah Pioneers Museum, where we are. Just a little bit about the building. This building was built to be a museum, and it was dedicated in 1938. A lot of museums, pioneer museums especially, are older homes or other buildings that have been utilized or repurposed for pioneer museums. Well, this one, we were very, very fortunate to have a benefactor who donated the money to have the building built. So in 1935, the Daughters of Utah Pioneers were organized here, and that wasn't when we were organized, but they started collecting artifacts and pictures of our early pioneer settlers. And they needed a place to start putting them because so many things were getting lost, as you know, as they were dying off. So they started a writing campaign to get donations and money for a project to get a place to put these things. So Josephine Pace, who was George Pace's grandmother, wrote to a friend of hers, Hortense McQuarrie Odlum, and she lived in New York City, and she was very wealthy, and asked would she donate money, and she said absolutely. So she got on a train, 3 weeks by train, came to St. George, worked with the county commissioners, the city council, the mayor, and got this property donated to us. She hired the architects, the contractors, with her own money, had the building built. And it was dedicated in June of 1938, so we're almost 85 years old. And, well, we are 85 years old. And any ideas how much it cost? $17,500. Yeah. So in 1985, we ran out of space. So they started another fundraising, and they caused the second portion of the building, and it doubled the size of the museum. The money was raised by Hortense's second cousin, who still lived here, Farrell Moore. That second edition cost $90,000 in 1985, and it was dedicated. So we're very fortunate to have this beautiful building. We're the largest pioneer museum south of Salt Lake, and we're very proud of that. And we have these events. So they're on the third weekend. We have our lineup over here. We have 2 more. We don't do them in the summer. We're just getting ready to start our new season in September. So keep an eye out for that. One last thing before we start today. This is a traveling Smithsonian exhibit, and it is called Crossroads, Changes in Rural America. The Smithsonian, which you're all aware of, have these traveling exhibits, and they go around to different communities in the country. It is going to start here in Washington County at the Silver Reef, the Cosmopolitan Building, if you know where that is. It's next to the Silver Reef Museum, and the Smithsonian Traveling Exhibit will be there March 9th through April 26th, I think. This is a book, and we have some of these pamphlets, so pick one up. We have a large, there are lectures, there's videos, a lot of things that are happening all over in the different towns in Washington County. And we are going to have an exhibit here about, and it's the theme is Crossroads, Changes in Rural America. It's going to be really fascinating. So, on to today's event. We had asked our former mayor, Dan McArthur, to talk to us about what's it like to be a mayor, and a little bit about our mayors from the time that St. George was first settled. So, he's a longtime resident, born and raised, yeah, along with me. And so I'd like to turn the time over to Dan McArthur.
Thank you. It's interesting for me because people ask me if I've lived my whole life in St. George. I say, not yet. But I have bought my cemetery plot next to my parents out in the cemetery. So it's a pleasure for me really to come anytime to talk about St. George, Dixie. I always call it Dixie. And in order to start this, you've all got cards here. So I started this a lot by when I become mayor. That was a song that Rowan DeFury wrote to an old tune from the South, and so she put it together, and those are the words of it. And they used to go around from Program Bureau and welcome groups into town, tourists, and she would not leave until everybody was enthused. If they didn't get enthused, she stayed, until she was rocking. She's a large lady, and when she sat down on a piano bench, she occupied the whole bench. But what a person that helped a lot of youth doing their talent. There's one of them that I went and listened to a lot was Mayor Marion Bowler. He was a neighbor of mine. He was the mayor, known as a singing mayor, and he had a beautiful voice, and he entertained a lot of people. And he sang with Program Bureau all the time when they did. So I want to start this because we did this at ribbon cuttings. We did it at groundbreakings. We did it at another. Beth, good to see you. That's right. In fact, I didn't write down on here, but I'm going to mention it now. You come in because it's very important that what Beth has played here in our community. But anyway, it's called "Are You From Dixie?" It has 2 verses, and there's only one thing different. The second one's louder than the first one because it's the same words. Okay? So if you want to, you can hear me sing it, and then you can join in with me, and then we're going to sing it again. But I want more volume, excitement in this. I mean, we're talking about Dixie. Okay? Are you from Dixie? I said from Dixie, where the fields of cotton beckon to me. I'm glad to see ya, to say how be ya, and the friends we're longing to see. If you're from Santa Clara, Washington, or St. George Fine, anywhere below the Iron County line, then you're from Dixie. Hurrah for Dixie! 'Cause I'm from Dixie too. Hey, you did pretty good, but let's see if you can do any better. Are you from Dixie? I said from Dixie, where the fields of cotton beckon to me. I'm glad to see ya, to say how be ya, and the friends we're longing to see. If you're from Santa Clara, Washington, or St. George Fine, anywhere below the Iron County line, then you're from Dixie. Hurrah for Dixie, 'cause I'm from Dixie too. Yahoo! I'm from Dixie too. All right, get that out of the way. When I was mayor, my council, and I need to talk about them because this community could not be what it was without the city manager we had, and those councils. There was 2 or 3 councils, but there was one special one when we did a lot of things. The airport, Southern Corridor, Northern Corridor, Red Hills Parkway, all those, Snow Canyon Parkway, a lot of the things, the flooding, when we had the flooding in 2005. I'll talk about a little about those. But anyway, I couldn't do it without them. And the one that I can't do it without is my wife, Bunny. Bunny is an amazing person. And she's put up with a lot to be with me we'll be 54 years in September. We were actually married on September the 11th. And you know what happened on September the 11th? The Twin Towers went down. Mountain Meadow Massacre happened. But ours was happy. And it still is. Well, most of it was happy. Anyway, I just want to say thank you and for her. The first thing we did, and let's see if we bring this thing up. That's my screenshot. But I got one here. Let's see if I can find where it was. Now I got to go back into this one and find. I forget where I put these sometimes now. Now I got to go back and browse. Yeah, iCloud. Let's see if I can find it. Where is it?
You want the mayor's DUP?
No, I want. Yeah.
Okay. There it is.
Mayor. No, I want the one that says Heritage Week.
Oh, okay.
Maybe back one more. I don't know. Where is it? Maybe I won't be able to show you.
Go back.
Well, you got them up here anyway. Yeah, don't because it's the same thing.
Okay.
So it's there. Anyway, when yeah. She likes her shake in the morning, and oh, you want the other picture? Let me see if I can find a better one. All of her pictures are better of her. I just want to say, when I first became mayor in 1994, and I served for 20 years till 2014, St. George grew quite a bit. But we're going to talk first. I want to cover these mayors because I used to say all the time, I still do, that we stand on the shoulders of giants who went before us, who made this place what it really is. And even today, as a missionary in our church historic sites, we always talk about there was nothing here in this valley, not a thing when they came here. Maybe a Gila monster or two, or snakes, or lizards, cactus, a few things like that, but nothing. Maybe a cottonwood tree along the river banks, here the Santa Clara and the other, not much down the Fort Pierce. But there might have been some of them that got washed away when a flood had come, and they had floods often. But there was nothing here. Those people were called because they were faithful. They knew that they would be strong, and they'd have strong families, and they had strong testimonies of the gospel of Jesus Christ, their beliefs. And so they were called to come down here, and Brigham Young meant this community to be strong. Even rivaling Salt Lake City. And it took quite a while for it to get that way. I mean, it does today, because I used to say there's only two types of people, those that live in St. George and those that are going to or want to. So anyway, one of the first things I did was develop Heritage Week. Nobody knew when St. George's birthday was. I could ask anybody, they didn't know. Now I can ask them, and I used to give little pins or, something else out. And so we made this, and it's on there still. You can see Heritage Week. There's another one. DUP's put one. I don't know if you have this one, but I know they have another one that covers all these mayors, and they've been sent to me. I'm not going to cover every one because in this particular document, when we honored all those up to my time, they said it was 32, but I think if I look at a new one, they say I'm like 35. So I don't know. But anyway, that's what it is. And so we owed it to these people, starting with Erastus Snow, who was the leader of those people that came down here and said, he was 20 years, or more than 20 years, a leader. When he died in Salt Lake. But he was the one that set it apart and actually laid the community out. And I can talk all about that because that's a big one. And then these are the others. Now, I'm not going to cover them exactly there. I'm going to cover how I've got them written down in mine, or covered just a few of them in what they did, because most of them, just like Chris Blake, who was the mayor of Ivins, we served about the same time, a great mayor, and he served on the Washington County Water Conservancy. Did you on the Water Conservancy? It was solid waste. Right. Solid waste district. And we determined at that time that a big community like St. George could have got our waste picked up cheaper than the rest of the county. But because we're Dixie all together, we do it, and we're all charged the same. The cities collect it, and they might add different, so the price might be different based on the city of what fees they have in order to get those. But that's the whole county is charged the same for solid waste to the cities per resident, so that it's beneficial because we don't know where people are going to live. They might want to live in Ivins. They might want to live in Leeds, or they may want to live in Pinto, or they may want to live in Enterprise. Those 19 communities that consist of Washington County is who Dixie is. And when I was on there and the mayor, I went to 8 radio stations every week. It was 9, so it's only time, 8 of them, and did live call-in shows. And I only had one that was really, Frank used to call all the time and cuss everybody out, and everybody cuss him out. And one time he called and said that, Mayor, that down here at this intersection where Indian Hills drives into, Dixie Drive, there's bushes in the way. You can't see, blocking the intersection. I says, well, I'll meet you down there after the show. And I went down there, and we met, and we talked. And I agreed with him, let's move that tree. And after that, he didn't say negative things really too much about me. He still said a lot of them about other people and other things. But, he's since passed away. But that's how we get along in this place, is talking to one another and not just taking something what we hear as gospel. We fill it out in our hearts. Okay, back to all these mayors. There's one theme that comes about them, and it's been with me too, and I'm sure it was with Mayor Blake. Water. Where do we get our water? Well, we got the Virgin River, we got the Santa Clara. It's a Virgin River drainage, and we still get our water from there, whether it's in underground or whether we put it in lakes. And since then, they've been able to build lakes or build in another one. And we'll put water in those. And then we did the same thing with the Washington County St. George built the water treatment plant during my tenure, and we actually maxed it out. So when we went to them and said, why don't we just give them to the water district, the plant, they don't have to buy it. We've already paid for it, our citizens. Put the plant in, and then they can expand it. And so that's what we did. So now we tie all of the communities together with that same water system so we can do that. Power's the same way. They had arguments in the early days between Dixie Power and St. George. Well, St. George, our power department, they were the one that made all the money, and they had everything, new trucks and everything. Well, we finally, during my time, we joined them together, and they put it underneath the city. It couldn't be just run by, one of my cousins, his name was Rudger McArthur. They called him Little Caesar. He's a great guy, and he told some people where to go. But he was able to run all this. We brought it all together. He retired, and then we divided it kind of between water and power and made it one department. Now it's separated again, I think. But they made it work with all of the different people and make it fair to all the citizens so that they were paying for it. Another thing we did, I'm jumping around, as you might know, but all of these men had the same thing. We had one, I can't remember the name of the one, about the old library we had that was done there, I put in, and it had to be tore down, even though we all wanted to keep it, because the money was donated. What was that called? The Carnegie Library. Carnegie donated money to the communities. It was like $8,000 to the city, and one of the mayors was in charge of that and getting it all together, and we had a wonderful library. But they could not, even though we wanted to make it into a historic building, couldn't. So they had to tear it down. It went between the Woodward and the Tabernacle. But we took the main doors and others in between, the Dixie Academy, which started out at Dixie College, and the Tabernacle. There was a library there. It looked like the Pizza Hut, I called it. That was Les Stoker's design, but it was not, I didn't like it. It didn't fit downtown either. But we talked the county in, because it was under the counties. You trade us that, and everybody wanted to build on the parade ground, where people had all the time, where everybody people were sent off to war, they returned from war, they did everything. They even started the first rodeo down there in that town square, and they wanted to build on it. And so when we took out the schools, Poncho, no, Roy Taylor, you had to tell him, we're going tomorrow. You want to tell him? We're going to Sons of Utah Pioneers there tomorrow. I'm part of that too. But anyway, we did, where was I? I get so mixed up sometimes. But the parade ground, yeah, we did it. And Montrue Larkin was a great woman. She come to all the time, Mayor, we got to do this, you got to do this. I said, no, Montrue, we're trading the county, and we're going to build a new library, and it's got to look historic, and it's got to use real red sandstone like the other buildings here, and put it in. And we, the city of St. George, will pay for the rock. And so we did. So we could anchor our middle of our town with 4 historic buildings. One built in 1911, one in 1904, and then, of course, the new library, and then the Tabernacle, it was dedicated in 1876. So that's what it was. When I retired, when I was defeated, which it was, just like all of us mayors, if we run too much or whatever, people want to change, I got defeated, and the council decided they wanted to name the parade grounds the Daniel D. McArthur Parade Grounds Memorial. And so the plaque's over underneath the bushes, where it probably needs to stay. But that place is now a center for the community. I have a slide here in a few minutes, because I'm going to run through a whole bunch of slides, and they're random because I didn't know how to organize them. Anyway, I'm not a tech person. So anyway, I'll go on, and they'll start me off on different subjects that's going to jump around during my tenure. But all of these mayors had different things, but they all talked about water. And one of the early ones, I can't tell you, they're all here. You can read them. You can look them up on the internet and read them, because it talks about one of the major things that each one of those were in charge of. But water was all of them. They had to get water from Cottonwood. They had to buy the rights. Then they had to get them from over towards Hurricane and other places. And and Washington and get it in the system. And then they had to get the water and bring it down in pipes, and they brought it down in a ditch first, and then they turned it to wood pipes, and then they had to change it to metal pipes, and my dad got involved and welded those in. They all come in up by the Sugarloaf. Finally, they built a big round tank up there, and we've kept that tank. Now people can get on it. I used to hold dances on it and everything, but it's still there for people to enjoy, and that's why I supported the desert tortoise habitat, is because I said, if you're going to put a fence around that thing, then we'll be against it. We don't want it. We were here before the desert tortoise. I brought some back from Lake Mead when I come up. I got them for $1 a piece, and then they got away when I wired them to my tree. The wire broke or something, and they went up on the hill. Anyway, the desert tortoise come from other places too, and it has a right to be here, and it's a blessing to us. But you can't keep people out. You've got to be able to go in there and ride bicycles, not motor bicycles, not motorbike vehicles, bicycles, horses, hunting, those kind of things. And so it stayed that way, and it's been a blessing to us because there's an area that's not going to be built on, and yet we can still put things through it. We're having trouble maybe if we ever do the northern corridor that we wouldn't take off our plan. We was able to get Red Hills Parkway, and if we didn't put it in when we did, at the end of Carl Brooks's term, in fact, we had Ralph McArthur was the county road agent. He came to us because we was telling him we wanted to put that in from Mount Hope, or from the head of that street, over to SR 18, or the Highway 18. And he said, I can rough that in for you for $15,000. And so he did. He roughed it in with a cat and got it in. Today, we wouldn't be able to build it because of all the environmental issues and other things. But now you go up there, that's one of the busiest roads because we're blessed with topography. We got hills on 4 sides of us. We got 3 rivers that all go in there, and they have to have bridges and other things, and we have to put people through them. One of the first things I was put on a committee by Gray Larkin was a transportation committee to look at transportation in an area. How are we going to develop this? Because nobody in the state had transportation plans. And we put together, and they said, bring up whatever you want. There's nothing too ridiculous or anything. You can talk about anything you want. So one day I told them, I said, well, you take St. George Boulevard and let's put it right through that hill because there's nothing on the other side except for Atkins cattle and Snow's slaughter yard and whatever else over there. And no, it cost $3 million. That went away. I felt bad, because now we've got Bluff Street. It has to. Of course, you go over to Dixie Drive, and of course, you got Valley View and Indian Hills on around the hill. You got all these things that made our community, but we had to do up something, and now that's where we are. And now you look at it, and everybody complains about traffic. I know, I do too, because we've got a lot of them because we've grown a lot. So anyway, this is the ones that I wanted to cover a little bit. I'm related to 3 of them for sure. They're easy. Thomas Cottam was the he's right here. He was the mayor from 1900 to 1904. He's a great-grandfather. And they've got some of his chairs, a couple of rocking chairs in here that he made for Brigham Young. He made it for the temple. We've got one in the Brigham Young Winter Home. But a great guy, and he did, each one of them talk about the things that they did. But I'll bet you this is an educational system for him. Woodward completed, and the foundation laid for the construction of the Dixie College during his time. And it took a while. I was doing the Dixie Academy. Now on the other side here, we got all these other mayors too. I can only really relate that I know with anywhere right here with Bill Barlocker. Bill Barlocker, not a picture of him here. There's one on the site. You can look at him. But he ran for governor. The only one that's run for governor. He didn't make it. But he was a great person, had turkey production plant, and it's out there where the Kelwood Company is on the old highway where the tunnel was on over to Middleton, the old road. He was there. Then Marion Bowler. Marion Bowler had a Dixie Appliance on Main Street. He was the singing mayor, beautiful voice. And he ran kind of the theater up the street from him. I think he worked over on the Gaiety too, and now that's been redone. Neil Lumberg, and there was a baseball field in the town donated to him, but now they built a school on it, a downtown school, elementary. And then Gray Larkin. I knew Gray really well. he was my bishop, and I replaced him in the ward. And that was the ward I was born in. And I was born in 1948, and he was that. And then he became the stake president down in the Morningside. They moved south of the freeway. It was the first growth over there. And he was one to get the city organized, build the new city office building here. It used to be an old building on Bluff Street. And then Carl Brooks. And I was able to work with Carl Brooks for 12 years before I was, he was in probably, because he would have been in 2 years when I was elected to be on the city council. I served there for 10 years before I ran for mayor. And Carl was another one, historian, Juanita Brooks. Stories. One time we was in Washington, D.C., and he was talking about the Thomas Jefferson thing, and he called it something else, and we, as a council, all got him there and kind of teased him a long time about that because he got it wrong. But he didn't get other things wrong, and there was no city you ever went into or anywhere you went that Carl Brooks didn't know somebody, or they didn't know him. I mean, they knew him because he was very much liked and very much involved in state offices. Gray was state transportation, head of transportation of UDOT. Carl Brooks was there. He was also the president of Utah League of Cities and Towns, which I later took that over for a little while. But these are all the mayors, and they all did wonderful things, from education to libraries, but all of them were involved with water. The necessity of water, having more, developing it, and sharing it with the other neighbors. Okay, have any questions about any of them, or anybody want to make any comments about the mayors? That's what they'd asked me originally, to talk about the early mayors of St. George. I could refer here, but I only knew, from Neil Lumberg. I knew Bill Barlocker, but I was just a young guy then. Okay? All right, then let me go back into some of the things that I've been involved with, because 20 years, St. George, when I was first elected to city council, was 13,000 people in 1984, roughly there. 10 years later, it was 29,000 when I ran for mayor. And when I finished in 2014, it was 85,000. Today, they're about 105, 108,000 right there somewhere. Depends when it is. And so people want to come here. And we started a lot of things because we say, why are they coming? Why are they coming here? Well, we all know. They're coming to be introduced, and now we've been found, and people want to move from other places. We see them from California, from Arizona, from Idaho, from Michigan, we meet a lot of people that come here to St. George. One of them, I don't know if I ought to tell that story about the guy from Los Angeles. He lived in a place called Paradise, and you remember the fire that burnt the whole city down? Well, when he came, they told him to go up and check out Oregon and Washington. He went up, didn't like it. He said, go down and look at Arizona, Gilbert, Phoenix. Went down, didn't like it. He knew Las Vegas. He come back to Las Vegas. He said, I've never been up to this Veterans Memorial Highway, I-15. Never been further than Vegas. Let's drive up there, he told his wife. Let's go up and see where it goes. When he comes through the cut in the hill down here, he said, oh, do you hear the angels singing? This is the place. This is where we got to be. And he went right out and hired a real estate agent. And the real estate agent took him around while he was there, and they couldn't find what he wanted. He said, here's my card. You know what you're looking for. You know what I want. If you find it, call me. Well, it wasn't a week or two later. I don't know what the time was. But anyway, my boy was telling me this story because he was over measuring a gate for the guy. He had moved here. And he said, he found it. He found one up against the desert tortoise habitat up above Green Spring Golf Course, clear up in the end. And he said, people don't want me to come here because they're Mormons and they'll try to baptize you. You can't get a drink. You just won't like it. Don't move up there. He says, I come up here. My next door neighbor, there's one guy that doesn't live here. It's a second home. The neighbor's there. They talk to me. There's no graffiti. The streets are clean. I haven't met a son of a bitch yet. That's what he told my son. Sorry, excuse me. But I was just quoting as a quote. Anyway, time went by. He liked the work we did. And a few months later, a gentleman come in. I'd never met him. And he come in our shop getting something, our welding shop. And he started talking about, I found this place to be pretty good. I just barely moved here. And I said, oh, yeah, let me tell you this story. I started telling him that story, but my son had told me about this fellow, and he says, I'm that guy. He says, I still haven't met a son of a bitch. Anyway, that's the kind of people that are coming here too. Great people that find this place a great, enjoyable people with a lot of people that they like to associate with. Now, I want to tell one. I'm going to jump a little bit to Beth Cottam. You know, Beth has been around here for a long time. She's married to Sid Cottam. He was killed in an accident on 26 years in April. And down here on one between Santa Clara, it's not Snow Canyon, Sunset Boulevard. Yeah, he was hit there and killed. Great kidder and a joker. Really a nice guy. Anyway, Beth worked with, what was your organization? What was it called? The 5 County Association of Governments. And Beth come because he couldn't get some of the people that didn't have funds and other things to get around. And she wanted to start a bus service. So she got some vans, and she come talk to us. And none of us wanted to go into that. Once you start down that road, there's no turning back, you know, and it's just going to grow, and it'll cost you more money. You can get funds and everything else. But finally she convinced us we ought to, and the buses granted to finally one with a folding door. And people kept coming, and she did it, and they did service to people with handicaps or that needed that, and they still do. If they're within a certain distance from a bus station, then they'll go pick them up, deliver them there, bring them back. I don't know how much they cost, but it's very minimal. And everybody else, they put like $1 for a ride, no matter where, clear through the city. And it's expanded a lot. We bought, I don't know how many buses. Now we're going to Ivans. We said everybody has to pay their way. St. George is not going to pay for it, so they pay on that. And now Washington joined, and they do it. Now Hurricane's on it, and now they want to go up to Zion. The government will do it. They're getting some more new buses, and they'll do that with whatever they do to get the buses, and that all come about because of starting one individual.
It wouldn't have happened without Dan McArthur.
Well, but it was a thing to do, and the council was on top of it, and Beth was the pusher.
We couldn't get people to their job places. They didn't have transportation, so they couldn't work, so they couldn't support themselves. So the purpose of it was to get them self-reliant, and so I just want you to know that wouldn't have happened without Mayor.
Well, thank you for that. It's really a lot of other people. I was just part of it, and happy to do what we could with that. That was one thing. The airport was another one. When SkyWest decided to stay here, SkyWest Airlines started here. They built a building out there, still on River Road, and a big one. And I think they own the land around it. They could expand even more. Jerry Atkin was the chair of the committee. Ralph Atkin and his brothers started that airline. And they come to me one day. They said, Mayor, we got an idea. They'd been flying Brazilias. They'd fired a Metro. They had JATO rockets in. If they couldn't get off, they'd fire them and they'd shoot them off the runway because it was only 5,800 feet long. Couldn't build it any longer. But it'd be airborne when you went off the end because it's a couple of hundred feet down to the fields. But anyway, they couldn't make it any longer. We'd expanded as far as we could. And they come in and they brought this little regional jet. Said, we're going to start flying Bombardiers, jets, made in Canada, I think. And he says, that's what we want to do. Well, we talked it over, and I remember going on the radio and other places and standing up in city council holding that jet and saying, SkyWest is here. They're going to stay here. Most times you get an airline, they want to move somewhere else, but they're going to be headquartered here. We're going to build a new airport. And it took us a while to decide where. We studied a lot of spots, but we owned 150 acres out at the present site now out there. And anyway, I remember we went back because the Water District and us had the same lobbyist that we'd hired together. His name is Marcus Faust. His dad was President Faust. And so he was back in Washington, D.C., and he went with us. And he took me one time with him, and he said, now, when you go in here and talk to the FAA, don't you say anything. Let me tell them about it, and let me tell your engineer how much we need it and how much we need federal funds for this space and everything. Well, they couldn't keep me quiet. I got in there and I sang them a song and quoted them a poem. And, and when we went out, they said, we'll get in touch with you. And they said, we're going to fund 90% of that airport. Because I'd hold that up and say, our citizens are not going to pay taxes to build this facility. Now, that's not everywhere. Other places have to raise funds somewhere. And they decided to do that. And then they flew in one of their big jets and parked it there, and people would see it up on the airport. And the head of the FAA come here, and we had a big ceremony with a lot of people. And she come up, and I have a picture of her giving me a check for $4 million to start that process. And so we started it. Didn't have all the funds to do it. We didn't have money to do it, but we decided that we would sell the rest of the airport to a developer. And we had a bunch of them. They had a $1 million deposit, non-refundable, that they gave us. And we picked one from Salt Lake. It was a very litigious group at that time. They'd sued a lot of people that didn't follow through with the things. They said, why are you going to do it? Well, we think we can do this. They say they will. We're shaking hands on this thing. And we made the deal. And then 2008 happened. And everything fell out. We all lost money. And if you had 401ks and others, you lost money. They come and said, well, we can't do it. We want out. Is there something you can do? We said, yeah, we've been holding your $1 million and getting interest on it. Now you've started, but we'll give it back to you with the interest, with the idea that you can come back in future if things change and approach us, and we'll do it again. Because it was $43 million. So that was going to pay our portion, selling the airport. And anyway, we had to do that, and then we found a way to fund it using some of our funds from power and water that had been accumulated to build things. We could fund it and get started, and we started building that airport. Then when we got up to the end, towards the end of it, they were, well, before we did the groundbreaking, and we got the letter of intent that we could do it, permission from the FAA and others. Then it come to the very last day that people could oppose it and put in things why they opposed it. And a former superintendent of the Park Service filed a lawsuit in behalf of the United States Park Service, National Parks, filed a lawsuit because of the noise study that was done on the airport. In that time, noise studies were the FAA did one, the Army did one, the Navy did one. Everybody did their own noise study. The Park Service started at 0 noise, and then they added the stream, if there was a river in it, the rustling of the leaves, the birds, the bees, and they added it up there. So it started at 0. The FAA's started at ambient noise. In other words, whatever flies over, that's 0, and we look at 20 years to see how much it's going to increase to see if this will work. Well, because it was 2 federal agencies, and the administration was in then, was not favorable to the progress and everything, it went back there, and they didn't decline it. They just remanded it back to the FAA, saying you need to do your study like the Park Service does it. So we had to study 65,000 square miles that flew over our city. They didn't land here. They just flew over the park and around here. 65,000 square miles. Cost $2 million. And it increased the cost of the airport from $90 million to $160 million in that time. And the land we could have bought for $3,000 an acre. We ended up buying for $73,000 an acre that we needed to extra because of that. And a news noise study went out that was national. So everybody dealing with the same noise study. But before us, it was done differently. Those are the kind of things that drive mayors and other people nuts when you're started down that road. And I had to go back. Well, I went back with the water district because I was on that. We had a convention there. I did for the cities and towns. I got back there with the city council. We was sitting there, and a person was there named, well, this was the Conference of Mayors. I went back, and he was going to speak to the Conference of Mayors. Well, where you went into the hotel, they had a chain across, and only the mayors could be in front of that. And there was about 300. It was cities above 30,000 people. And he was speaking to us about that. He was in President Obama's Secretary of State of Transportation of the whole United States. So he is over airports, roads, bridges, all that stuff. And I told my counsel, I'm going to go up and talk to him. They says, you can't get up there. They won't even let you next to the stage. His security and everybody. I says, well, watch, I'll go there. So I went around another corner, found a door, and I saw some people walk through that door. That they went in, and he was right there. And they stepped and talked to him. I just followed him in, stood behind him. And when they left, his security was around him because they wouldn't let me go up to him before the meeting. And he said, what can I help you with? I says, I'm a mayor of a little city out in the west. And I want here to thank you that we got some commitment from here to build an airport, but your people up in Seattle, that's over all the regions there, will not talk to us. Can't get him to call us back. He says, what's your name? What is it? I said, told him who I was, my phone number, and I left and I went back and told the council, they're going to call us next week, and we're going to get some money, and we're going to get some help on this. We're bypassing, the headquarters up there. Anyway, he said, Mayor, that's not going to happen, I said, no, I talked to him. He said he would. Well, the next Tuesday, we got home Saturday, Tuesday, I got a phone call from the head of the quarter up in Seattle. He said, my boss told me I needed to talk to you. I talked to him for 15 or 20 minutes. By the end, he says, we'll see what we can do. And when we got done there, they decided to fund it at the higher level, to go to 60% again. And so we had funding for that. Well, a few months later, I was back there on another thing, and I decided I wanted to go down and see Secretary LaHood and tell him thank you. So I went in there, and, I'll go back to the other one. Well, no, this was the other one at the Conference of Mayors. And I had to go up and stand at a microphone. I was scared to death. I'd never really talked to a large group of people like that. And all these mayors over, whether it was Seattle, Los Angeles, San Antonio, Texas, Los Angeles, they were all there, and I knew them. Miami, I sat down with them and knew a lot of them. And they were talking and complaining about federal funds that come to the states, and then they divvied it up to the cities in their states. And they were saying, why couldn't it come just to them? They didn't want the state to interfere with funds coming to them. And I got up there and I had this poem that I'd memorized that I thought he'd like. And so I got in there and I said, it isn't enough to say in our hearts we like a person for their ways. It isn't enough to fill our minds with pains of silent praise, nor is it enough to honor a person as our confidence upward mounts. It's going right up to that person themselves and telling themselves that counts. If a person does a job that you really admire, don't leave a kind word unsaid and fear that to do so might make them vain or cause them to lose their head. But reach out your hand and tell them well done and see how their gratitude swells. It isn't the flowers we strew on the grave, it's the word to the living that tells. He said, I like that poem. I said, I got a copy of it right here for you. Because they wouldn't let me go up and talk to him. And so I followed him out with his entourage out to his car, handed him what I needed, and told him thank you. I gave him a key to the city I probably brought one here, like this. You can't see it here, but it was a key to the city like this. And I gave it to him, and I had it engraved before I went. Thank you. And he... and so our airport started processing. Well, when it gets to the end, try to make a long story short. When I got towards the end, I wanted to go tell him thank you. We wanted to invite you to our opening of our airport and have you fly on the first airplane that comes out of there. And so I go back. I walk into, I didn't know where transportation headquarters was, so I told the taxi driver, take me down to the transportation. They took me down. Everybody was going through the gates, and they all had cards, and they'd put them and swipe them and go in. I didn't have a card. In fact, I don't even think I had a suit on. And I said, I just want to see Secretary LaHood. I want to give him this medallion that I had made. It said, thank you on it, and a logo of the city of St. George. And she says, well, you got an appointment? I said, no, I don't have an appointment. I'm just out here for a day, and I just wanted to stop in and say hi. Well, if you haven't got an appointment, you have to get it a year ahead to get an appointment with him. I said, well, I'm just here today. Well, I can't let you in. Okay, so I started walking back out. Everybody's still going in. And I started out there, and I had a thought come to me. So I walked back in, and this person that was watching the gate, she looked at me, and I said, are you a Christian? And she looked at me kind of funny, and she said, well, yes. And I said, well, you read in the Bible where Jesus Christ healed the 10 lepers? Yeah. I said, one of them turned around to say thank you. Come, I'm that guy coming back in to say thank you. In a few minutes, I had the people down there. They come down to welcome me in, wanted to take me. But he wasn't there. Secretary LaHood wasn't there, but I gave him the coin. And then I thought, hey, that worked here. Let's go over to the FAA and invite them. And that was 4 miles away, so I knew where that was. I walked over to that office. And I went in, and I said, I had the same thing, same type of person there, wouldn't let me in. I didn't have an appointment. Anyway, I said, are you a Christian? And she said yes. And I told her the same thing, and it had the same effect. She brought people down. They took me up to the office. I met with the Secretary of Transportation for 30 minutes. And I had to excuse myself after that. And I come back, and I in my hotel room, and I got a call from them, and they said, Gary Esplin, he said, Mayor, what are you doing back there? They're going to fund that thing. They're going to fund our ILS, which is an instrument landing system. They're going to fund that. We don't have to pay the $3 million. They're going to do the whole thing. They're going to test it, they're going to install it, and they'll maintain it. Because we didn't have it at this airport. But we needed it out there for all kinds of weather. That's the kind of thing that happens when you say thank you. Thank you will open a lot of doors. And I didn't know, but that thing come to me to use that one thing that I'd learned in the thing, and it paid off. I wanted to tell you that story. I only got 5 more minutes, and I got 20 things to talk about here. Let's see if I can. The flooding of 2005. That happened to be, Gary Esplin's our city manager, good city manager too, really good. And when I got elected, I met with him because we fought like this on the basketball court, you know. Back then I was a pretty good athlete, and he was really good. But he said, I went in to see him and said, Gary, we've been kind of a thing, but you're the runner, you run this city. I'm just a figurehead. And he said, Dan, if we can't get along, I'll resign. I said, no, we can get along, Gary. Let's do it. And we become very good friends. And anyway, he was out of town with some of his friends. One of them was Jeff Norton, and he had some other ones there. Rod Orton, I don't know if Rod was with him. But anyway, they were on a cruise ship. And there's looking, when I was eating, on the screen, a house fell into the river. And Jeff says, I built that house. That's in Santa Clara. I built that house. Well, they couldn't get it. They won't stop the cruise ship. They couldn't get off. They couldn't go anywhere. I went with the chief police down Marlin Stratton, a great chief, and we went down, met in Bloomington, and he says, Mayor, you can get sandbags. We didn't have any. He says, you can get sandbags and everything. All you got to do is declare an emergency. He says, yeah, that's all I have to do. I said, okay, I declare an emergency. And with calls and everything, we started getting them. Volunteers started coming, and all those houses, I stood in front of some of them, and they'd shutter like this, then slide off into the river, and off they'd go down and blow up at the bridge or something. We lost 23 homes in there. And one of them was down in Creekside. We lost 3 there. But people come, and they got in the house. Nobody was there because it was second home or a condo. And they'd move the stuff out and put it in the next one. An hour later, they had to move it out of that and move it in the next one. An hour later, they had to move it out and put it in another one. We lost 3 homes in a row right there at that one time. And we stored them around and put them in trucks and hauled their furniture and other things off, and those houses disappeared. Well, in that one, there was a fellow, when I was looking there was a wall there, and a lady come up to me, and she says, Mayor, that's my house over there. It's 200 or 300 feet from the river. Can I stay in it tonight? I said, well, let's ask the chief. He said, no, I don't think you ought to. I said, no, you can't stay in it. You better move. The next morning, half of that house was gone. That was overnight. Anyway, the fireman was standing there watching people right next to a big wall, and he looked over the wall, and there was a little dog just on a little piece of dirt right there, and he reached down and picked that dog up and set it down, and off it scampered looking for his person. And some people said, that's so-and-so's dog. He lost his wife a couple of months ago, and that's the only thing he has in his life. And I said, well, look at that, you know. I have lots of examples like that. Another one I want to tell you about was down in, what was that called? It was on Indian Hills Drive. Anyway, Riverwood.
Yeah.
No, was it Riverwood?
I think so.
I don't know. But anyway, we went down in there, and I went up to a house. 2 or 3 of them had fallen in. Another was hanging over the side. And a woman come up to me. I didn't know her then, but her name was Glenna Sanderson. And I found out she's a relative of mine. She told me later. But anyway, she come up and said, Mayor, isn't this wonderful? I said, well, you just lost half your house. Yeah, but that can be replaced. But isn't this wonderful? See all these, I don't even know any of them. And they're going in, helping me, and they're moving things around. Isn't that great? I said, bless your heart, sister. And anyway, she went off, just still very positive about all the help we had here in the town, helping her. Didn't even know them. And some little kids saw that on the news because it come up on the news about this woman that lost her underwear. These kids took her little wagon, put a jar in it, went around and collected funds from people, just donations and coins. And when they got it, they come back to her and said, here, we saw you on the news. Here's some things for your underwear. And she says, that's my sacred underwear. And that is priceless to me. Thank you. These little kids that done that on their own. Nobody else got them, unless their parents. I don't know, but they did it. And she was telling me about that. Well, one other. Up in the city, we were trying because when you have disasters like that, you have people fall on them that really find prey and trying to make money on it. And you have people that want to donate. And so we had an officer that came up with the idea to call a place, a central place people could call in to volunteer and help. And anyway, I said, okay, let's do it. So I tell Bunny, let's go up there. I'll take you out to dinner, but let's go up. I have some other things I've got to do. Will you come up with me to that center, that emergency center? And so she did. And in a little while, she was manning the phone, listening to what they did. She come up and she says, Dan, there's a little lady here on the phone. She says she's 87 years old. She can't go help sandbag and do it, but she wants to help. What can we do? In my mind came a thing. I said, can she bake cookies? And Bunny asked her, and she says, yes, how many do you want? And we said, how many can you make? Bunny was asking her, and she says, I can make 12 dozen. I said, when you call back when we can. So here's this lady, 87 years old, couldn't do it, but wanted to volunteer and help. That's the way this community is and works, especially when it comes to disasters like those. And anyway, 2 hours later, she got a call. We sent the officer down, picked up, come back, the most beautiful wrapped, beautiful cookies, 12 plates of a dozen cookies on each one. Well, what are you going to do with them, Mayor? Go out and give the sandbaggers and take some pop with you, some root beer. We'll give them root beer floats and pizza because they were donating pizza and other things. And we did. Here, this little lady, stay in her home, helped. Everybody can help. I'll give you one other poem, and I've shared it with many of you guys here. I call it my Valentine poem. It's entitled Just One. It says, one song can spark a moment. One flower can make the dream. One tree can start a forest. One bird can herald spring. One smile begins a friendship. One handclasp lifts a soul. One star can guide a ship at sea. One word can frame the goal. One vote can change a nation. One sunbeam light a room. One candle wipes out darkness. One laugh will conquer gloom. One step must start each journey. One word must start each prayer. One hope can raise our spirits. One touch can show you care. One life can speak with wisdom. One heart can know what's true. One life can make a difference, you see. It's up to you. It's up to each one of us. People say you can't do things. We can do it. Everybody can give back somewhere. They can smile at somebody. They can help them. They can go visit them. They can do other things and do bigger things. A lot of people went in and helped people muck out their houses. Others working in the backyard, sandbagging, in this particular thing. That was probably one of the highlights of my time as being mayor. Not because it was easy. It was because of the volunteers that come forward, the city council that supported it wholeheartedly, as they did the airport, as they did the town square, as they did Southern Parkway, as they did Northern Corridor, as they did other roads. Because, the mall was built all in that time. The university went other buildings. We did the town square. We started first night and fireworks in the city. We did them on the 4th of July and New Year's Eve. I don't know what they do now because I sit in my house and listen to it, but I don't go out and watch it necessarily. anyway, that's the kind of thing that made my life really good. Let's see if there's any other here that I can tell you. When I started, there was only 3 traffic lights in town, and then when I ended, there was over 100, and now we're like almost 200. And my wife won't go to an intersection if it doesn't have one, if it goes onto a busy road. The Dixie Center was built, and it stayed there. And, they tried changing the name of the county back in this woke time. And the citizens rose up so hard against them, they changed it back to the Dixie Center. They're going to make it the Greater Zion Center. Zion's 45 miles away, and it's a great thing, but it's not here in St. George. Power generation. I could go back when the first one was done, the first swimming pool. One of the first things we did is we sent people out because we wanted to have trails in the city. Well, we knew people come to me, there's complaining because Kent Perkins had sent people in the park department out putting red flags through property where a trail could be. And the owners come and said, Mayor, you're going to steal our property, and they're raising their arms up about it. I said, no, we're just looking. We can't condemn good land, but we ought to, along the river, we ought to do that. And he says, anyway, Gary got there, the city council, and we put a budget together and said, well, let's see if the people want recreation here. So let's put a plan together. We're going to build over 45 miles of paved trail. We only had 4 miles when we started this. We're going to put 40 for that. We're going to have a covered swimming pool. We're going to build a softball complex. It's called the Canyons. Top in the country, won the first place many times as the best one in the United States. And a park within a half a mile radius of every citizen. So it might be a pocket park, it might be a major one, but we're going to make so everybody has access, and they're not just this neighbor's park. It's everybody's park, but a half a mile from anybody in the city. And we put it out to out to the public. And it passed 82% to 18% against it. And it was 20 years, and it would sunset. And it just recently sunsetted, and they put it out again, basically. And they put the things, I told them, if you put what you're going to do with it, you got to prove up on it. And it passed. But it was still pretty high. I think it was 60s or something %. People liked it. When I finished my time as mayor, we had over 45 miles of trail, just barely. And some of it because going up U18, the state put that in, but it's part of our trail system, even though we didn't put it in. We have a solar power generating station. We redid some power generating over there. They're jet engines over by Costco on 3050 East. It's back behind some places down there, back where Ram Company is, down behind them. We doubled the size of that, $50 million a piece to do it. We put our power system around the city so it can be looped all the way around the city. Some people don't like it on the skylining down there, but they'd put it in before we got involved too much with it. It had to happen. Because when I was a young boy, we lived on 500 East, 269 South 500 East by Worthen Park, just through the block in the Armory. And when power went out, because we had it out once in a while, they had out blackouts or something for a period of time. Ours didn't go black because the hospital was on our circuit. And they had to keep it going, so our house always had power.
The rest of us, my brother and I counted one summer in the 60s, went out 97 times.
Yeah, see?
After we started counting.
And so what we did and decided to do, the power department and the leadership, and I'm not saying me, but it was during that time, decided let's do it so we can do rolling brownouts. Because I remember when somebody flew an airplane up by Parowan, it happened to fly into the big power line that come down through here that we tied onto, and we were out for 4 days. And I had to take our welders and go and then plug each freezer, and run the welder with the gasoline, other people too. And so we did it so, you'd only be down 45 minutes, and we might turn that power off and turn somebody else. If we had to do it, we could do a rolling brownout in the city. That happened, and it continues now. We had to expand the wastewater treatment plant. We put in, if you haven't ever been out there and seen the remote possibilities, they fly remote airplanes down beyond the sewer plant. I got some land because it was out at the airport, and they were going to kick them off. And they were coming, and I said, we can't kick you off. If you're out there, we got to build the airport, so we got to find somewhere else. So I asked Barry Barnum, who was over water, and he found that little spot right against BLM land, and now they've got a nice runway there, and a beautiful thing for them to do and keep doing. The bike patrol come in, footprints, where the guys have to get out of their police car, and I could talk a lot about it. Anyway, expanded on the trails. Marcus Faust. I had a lot of pictures that I didn't show you. I talked about it all, but I have a lot of pictures, and I'd like to, but it jumps all over, and it shows the city council and the different ones, and President Uchtdorf coming down and dedicating our airport. That was amazing because I loved these talks, and he was a Lufthansa or whatever that airline is. He's their chief pilot, and we had to get permission through the first presidency for him to fly down here and do that. We had President Hinckley down here, others to dedicate parks. Our one out in the college university in the middle of there, where the encampment mall. It's been an amazing thing we've done here in St. George, and it's because things can be done. You know, if you put your heart to it, put your mind, do the best you can, and don't be grumbling. I'm going to give you one more poem. I used to quote at the city council because we had some that were naysayers there and always complaining in the paper, other things. And it's called A Builder. And it has a good point in our lives too. Because I'm saying if you work at positive, doesn't mean you don't oppose something, but you kind of go to the positive, you talk it through and do other things. You can make things happen even when they're negative. And that's what I tried to do as a mayor, and is talk with people, whether it was the animal control. It rigged me over the plates a few times, you know, and I wasn't the best at some of those things. I didn't know all that stuff. But this one is one I quoted to him quite often. It says, I watched them tearing a building down, a bunch of men in a busy town. With a ho-heave-ho and a lusty yell, they gave a swing and a sidewall fell. I asked the foreman, are these men skilled and the men you'd hire if you needed to build? He gave a laugh and said, no, indeed, just common labor is all I need. I can easily wreck in a day or two what the builders have taken years to do. And I thought to myself as I went my way, which of these roles have I tried to play? Am I a builder who works with care, measuring life by the rule and square? Am I shaping my deeds to a well-made plans, patiently doing the best I can? Or am I a wrecker who walks the town content with the pleasure of tearing down? You know that I could do certain things, or maybe even say something that would ruin 54 years of life together. I know between my brothers and everything, there's things we can do, things we can say, things we can act that ruin something that's taken a long time to build, like a home and like a business. And yet, so, you know, we need to, and we've heard the best way to do that is by communicating, talking, working things through, and you can make things happen, and like it has here. And it's been a blessing for me, for the citizens that supported me for 5 terms as mayor, 20 years. I consider it a great honor to have served there. I loved it. Never increased any pay they gave me because it was something to do. It made my town, made my community. It was my community. I love it and love the people in it. And we still have some crime, but not much. Not so many that we can't take care of them. And our police department, we've supported them. It hasn't always been that way because we've had some trouble in our police department years ago. Somebody shot the police chief. But today, we do really well. And I just want to say thank you for letting me come. I'm sorry I didn't put up more slides because I have a ton of them, but it probably would have gone off in way too many other subjects. So thank you very much.
Thank you. I just wanted to say my dad was Alma Truman, and he worked for the 5-County Association and of the Utah State Travel Council. And he used to say his job was to go out and promote southern Utah and everything that we had to offer in Utah. And he said, when you complain about all of the traffic in St. George, you can blame me because I went out and encouraged all those people to come and stay here. But I think Dan McArthur probably assisted in that because he made it such a great place for people to come and stay. And I have often asked, why do people come here and stay? It was never that way when we were growing up. But It's a beautiful place, and a lot of it is due to our really, really good mayors, and Dan McArthur in particular. He has the record for being one of the longest serving mayors in the United States, I think. I don't know the longest, but
I don't know where it fits anywhere. Just an honor for me to be there. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, anyway, thank you very much. We so appreciate it. And please, we welcome you to come back to the museum sometime and go through and see some of the fun things that we have here. Well, thank you very much for coming.